Which profession attracts the worst kinds of people? Story 1. The executives that run MLMs. They're all bullies and manipulators. The worst kind of people that will tell you that your brother's funeral is a good place to recruit investors. I'm a consultant who had those executives as a client, and I promise this is correct. When our HR expert told them that they needed a policy on diversity, equality, and inclusion, the CEO responded that they didn't need anyone in DC telling them how to run their company. Like, the HR expert wasn't even saying they needed it in an ethical way. Just that they needed it to avoid lawsuits. The CEO still refused. So, legally exposing yourself to own the libs seems like a pretty awful type of person. Story 2. Pyramid scheme. Property agents. I have had a few friends that have become realtors later in life. The ones that stayed with it totally changed who they are. After a few years, they are hardly recognizable as the same people. Vain, shallow, and 100% of the time they are in character and trying to sell. Story 3. Academia. Intelligent people in very niche areas, with no consideration for the real world and social interaction, whilst simultaneously being told they are the best in the world at certain specific subject areas, which is true, but just not as many people care as academics think they do. You end up with an unnecessarily toxic environment of people trying to intellectually one-up each other and throw anyone off the ladder on their way up. It's a cruel, nasty, petty, and poisonous environment. My friend is in academia, and my God, is he the perfect fit for it. I'm too tired to list all the toxic and negative traits, but he's most of them, generally just an extreme superiority complex. Only reason I'm still friends is because he plays games with me online, and new friends are impossible to find. Came here looking for this. I have never been so unprofessionally treated as I have in academia. Although I am lucky to have found a number of lovely people to help me get by, I have also encountered a staggering amount of unjustifiably arrogant narcissists at every turn. Even with being very close to tenure, I've already decided that I'm getting out ASAP. It's not worth it for a lot of reasons, but especially because I can't suffer this foolishness for another 30 years. Story 4. In my experience, literally every profession ever. Every job I've ever worked has had sureheads, liars, thieves, abusers, and just nasty people you're better off avoiding. It's a sad fact that at least one of every 5 people is a total arrogant head. Story 5. Unpopular opinion, but nurses. There is a lot of toxic, abusive high school girl drama type behavior among nurses. It's such an important job, and about half the people doing it shouldn't be responsible for a yogurt, let alone a human being's life. It's like cops for women. It's a job that highly praises traits that a lot of women like to be perceived as having. It affords a lot of petty power and respect, and it gives them an excuse for being a miserable person. Cops and ER nurses are notorious for hooking up and or having affairs with each other, then getting married, and then cheating on each other, so it goes. The circle of life, or better described as the circle of wife. Sorry, but nurses? All the worst people from my high school became nurses. CNA is universally known as the arrogant dumb girl from high school profession. As someone in a related field, I've always seen nursing as a way to get a free pass to be a good person. So it attracts people with no other positive qualities, so they can fall back on being a nurse to be a good person. Obviously there are tons of good and great nurses, but those nurses would probably agree with that statement as well. Came here to say this. The nursing program at my university was pretty popular, and many students attended for the purpose of getting a nursing degree, so I had many nursing friends as well as just knew of many nursing students. The nursing department was filled with either the sweetest people or the absolutely nastiest people, and there was just no middle ground. Crazy to think that some of those people care for human lives now. It's amazing how many nurses were anti-vax, anti-mask during the pandemic. Friend is a CEO at a hospital, lost almost 80% of his nursing staff due to refusing to vax, lost 0% of his physician staff telling. I hate to agree. I work in an ancillary service, medical but not actually a nurse, and some nurses are just bad. Then again, I also find that the hospital administration is even worse. They're the reason why good nurses burn out and leave the nasty nurses behind. They're the ones that tell nurse managers to cut people for low census so that the nurses are working 6 to 8 patients to one nurse. The amount of charting required for 6 to 8 patients in one shift is astronomical. I can't even fathom how they do that and care for patients. Meanest girl from my high school does nursing as a side gig to her booming MLM business. Story 6. Law enforcement seems to have some problems. There's a reason why there's an old trope of the school bully growing up to become a cop. Some people are going to be attracted to occupations where you can intimidate people and have authority over them. 22 years in law enforcement has taught me that there are basically 3 buckets of folks who go into the profession. 1. People who just want a stable career with a pension and decent pay. 2. People for whom it's a tradition. Their family/friends are police/military and they want to carry on that legacy. 3. People who desperately want to be in charge of other people. The ratio will vary based on the location and particular job, but usually number 3 is the smallest group. However, their ambitions extend to their fellow officers and they tend to be the first to rise through the ranks and influence policy/culture. The vast majority of officers are as good a people as you'll find in any other walk of life, but while an occasional awful clerk at Walmart can ruin your day, it only takes one nasty cop to ruin your life. The 3 Ps: politics, police, and paparazzi. There's a parallel between women who become nurses and men who become cops. Story 7. Bouncers. I swear those people are always looking to create trouble so they can exercise their right to kick ass. Former bouncer in my youth, and I can 100% confirm that most of the drama we were in was caused by the 2 biggest guys that just wanted to fight with people and brag about it while we were having our after-shift drinks. I watched bouncers roughly escorting a guy out of a beach bar and they yelled something like, "You want to join? You feel tough?" at me. I just ignored them, but I found it was really unprofessional, so I went full Karen and wrote an email to their management. I'd like to think it helped. It felt pretty gross watching them basically start a mess with drunk people. Story 8. Sales, estate agents, recruiters. Ironically, I am also getting into sales. Spent several years in sales. I made the most money I've ever made in my life. I also lost nearly all respect for the intelligence of the average human. I'm in sales, and I have to agree with you. I'm not as successful as some of my peers since I refuse to do half of what they are willing to do to make a sale happen. I'm honestly only in sales because it's the only job I could find where I don't have a boss. It's mostly freedom for me, but there are definitely slimy people in it. It's not that sales attracts psychos, it just weeds out and spits out non-psychos. Sociopaths learn early how to fake empathy while still being ruthless. This makes them perfect salespeople. I work in sales, it's a 24/7 ego measuring contest. The egos I cross paths with on a semi-regular basis would blow your mind. Having an ego makes it easier to succeed in sales. You have to have insane amounts of confidence to succeed in sales, and it can be very difficult to be that confident without crossing over and being egotistical. Sales, specifically insurance salespeople and those who sell financial investment packages for retirement. You ever want to find out what happened to that narcissist guy in high school who couldn't amount to anything and was a bully? He's selling whole and term life insurance. Story 9. Tow truck drivers. At least 80% of all the tow truck drivers I've met have been felons, and about 98% have been shady psychopaths. Story 10. Reality TV. And by extension, influencers. I blame the people that create it and the people that watch it. The stars are just idiots taken along for the ride. Who on the earth actually watches Teen Mom? Okay, so not really a profession, but there is a certain subset of musicians who are also wannabe influencers, particular people who are very on Twitter. So backstabby and clout hungry. I find it worse the opposite way, the influencers who try to be musicians. Story 11. I thought I wanted to be an architect, but then I met a bunch of architects. And architecture students. And architecture professors. And they were pretty much all sociopaths. It was weird. I mean, how could it be so consistent? But there you have it. I majored in architecture for 2 years, and to this day I remember the pretentious, arrogant, almost self-worshipping attitude that career field has. I met an architect back then that said, if he wanted to, he could design a house that would make a married couple get a divorce. Where do these people get off? One of the big reasons I dropped out of the architecture program was that most of my peers were pretentious and hostile narcissists. And the professors had zero sympathy for the fact that I had a part-time job I worked to pay living expenses. I was actually told by one of them that I should reconsider my goals if I couldn't commit 100%. In 1 year, the people in my program destroyed what had been a lifelong career dream. Story 12. Paparazzi. I don't particularly pay attention to celebrity stuff, but I'll never forget when paparazzi climbed up the fence around Michelle Williams, I think that's her name, after Heath Ledger, her husband, died, to snap photos of a woman greeting her husband who had unexpectedly passed away a matter of days ago. I was pretty deep into my anger, nasty mainstream media who cares kinda stage at that time, but I remember feeling such a deep sadness for homegirl that not only did she have to deal with her husband's untimely death and taking care of their kids by herself, she also had to deal with these grimy fools trying to make a buck off of photos of her sobbing in her own backyard. It's really amazing that everyone pretty much universal hates paparazzi, but somehow they stay in business. They're not working for free. We have a culture obsessed with celebrity gossip, but nobody likes to see how the sausage is made. Absolutely lifeless humans. Audiovisual bottom feeders with a camera, searching for scraps and the next payment. Not only does their profession provide something that is arguably valueless, but the means to produce it is abominable.